So we are Be Human HR. I'm Nicole, this is Angela. We started our business just on 2 years ago. We're in Singleton, so pretty excited to be here. We've got clients kind of that spread from Scone to Newcastle, so we definitely know the valley, I guess you'd say. We've been here all our lives, we've worked in many different industries, so we've got kind of a good handle on the intricacies of things, I guess. So today what we really want to do is just give you our approach to HR. We often find that when we talk to people, their perceptions of HR is quite different to what our approach to HR is. So that's kind of where we want to break down some hit. Yeah.
I think we've worked in, the reason why we started is that we've worked in industry where, and we'll go through this. Does it work? Here we go. Where I guess we're in a lane, a HR lane, and we can't actually work with our team or our people in the way that we believe is the best space to operate to get the best out of your people. So we've sort of left the corporate industry and started to work with that small to medium business. So we prefer to work with, teams up to sort of 50 to help them understand their humans and their people and how to get the best out of them for their workplace, I guess. So that's where we've sort of started.
So what is HR? So I'm sure if we asked you all, you'd all have a little opinion. Some of the things that we often find is HR's scary.
Well, HR people are scary.
We're not. HR only get involved when the shit is about to hit the fan. If you get a call from HR, it's because you're going to get fired.
HR are just about filling in the paperwork or the payroll. We often get that HR is safety. HR tells us to do things, but they don't really understand my role or the business and how it functions properly. They'll listen to us, but nothing ever happens. They spoil the fun. Has anyone ever had any of these things when they've worked in business? Like, you only see that HR person if something's going down, essentially. They're just about hiring and firing. They're all about policy and procedure. One day they'll just get replaced with technology.
So just as a guide for us, who has a designated HR person in their business? Who does their own HR, just, gives it a crack themselves?
Yep. Which we do our own marketing. Enough said, right? It's what you do.
And just thinking about how your team, I guess, also perceives HR and what that means in your business. And what probably influences your own thoughts on HR. It's probably a past experience, whether it be good or bad, that kind of makes you go, HR is, or HR is pretty cool.
Who here actually enjoys doing their own HR in their business, or who finds it's just something that it's what you do because it's part of business and you can't yet, not big enough to outsource it, or it's costly to get it. Yep. So where do you work at? Sorry.
5 surveys.
Oh yes. Okay. I should have spun around before. Okay. So what is HR to us? So we may have a different approach. So HR to us is about connections and rapport building, because we believe that if we don't have those connections and rapport with our team members, then when we need them to get on board with things or we need to introduce things in the business, it's really quite hard to achieve that. We believe it's about anticipating problems before they arise and being able to look at the situation and what the likely chances of things happening are. It's about listening, and by listening we mean really listen to our people. Like we said before with Wayne, we often don't want to know what our customers think about us. We often don't want to know what our employees think about us either. So it's easier to pretend we understand or assume we understand what it is that they need and want without actually asking. We think it is about checking in with our people and taking the time to do that and doing it regularly, and every single one of them, because what is good for one person or what one person likes to feel when they come to work doesn't mean that that is what someone else likes to feel when they come to work. You want to go? Or me?
Yep. I'll have a little chat now. So it's also about knowing your team and knowing their strengths. So it might mean that I'm really good at managing a team, but Angie's not. So it's knowing that, you know, this person is better at doing this job and this person would be better doing something else. And we know that, you know, there's always tough times, there's always tough conversations to have, there's difficult things that we need to sort out. But having those connections and having those honest conversations all the time leading up to that point makes those times and difficult conversations much easier to have. We were also talking the other day, HR for us especially is about kindness and respect and understanding your team. For us, that's something that technology is never going to replace. I was in a little networking group of people before Christmas, and this one guy was HR, but he developed this platform and this computer program that got all the information from the employees and, you know, how they were feeling and blah, 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 blah. And I thought, you know what? You can also get that from actually sitting down and having a conversation with your employee, and it's probably going to get a far better result than sitting there, them filling out a little form online and you never actually speaking to them. So for us, technology is never replacing HR. And also, it's about being kind. And that also means having those difficult conversations with your employees. If you're not actually telling them that this has happened or you're not doing this really well, you're not being kind to them by not having those conversations. Having those conversations and showing them respect and, you know, trying to solve whatever problem it is being kind. Being kind can mean having those difficult conversations, yeah.
I think we often fear that kindness means that we can't manage or lead our team, but we can. So for us, the industrial relations part is a small part of HR. So when we think about awards and pay conditions, some legal compliances and things like that, whilst it does form a great portion of it, it's not necessarily the whole part of it. So who here loves the IR or the industrial relations side? Because for me personally, it's like the pain of my existence. I like the other side of it, the people side. Do you enjoy?
I like it all.
Yeah.
I like the variety that HR brings.
Yeah. And what kind of perception do you hope to give off as a HR person or a HR leader?
I like to be the middleman between the employees and the company. So both feel that they can come to me, express what they're after, and go back to idle time and try and make them.
Yeah. Can be tricky navigating the realms of it. So, and I think too, when it comes to those aspects of IR, that we can, as a business, go above and beyond it. Like we will often get people that may say, or we get a message from a business that might say, like last week with the floods, my staff have had one day off, do I pay them sick leave or do I pay them annual leave? But it can also be that fact that if you have the ability to value your team in that way, you can pay them as if they were there working, which is your choice as well. So I think sometimes we think we have to really stick to the rules
stick
and
in the lane.
guidelines, with understanding that it's not always in our ability to do that financially. So we set some standards sometimes. Okay, so our outcome is to have happy humans in your workplace. that will then hopefully on-go to productivity. It'll on-go to them wanting to be on board with your customer service ideas and things like that as well. So if they're feeling happy and supported, they're more likely to come to work, do a great job, put in the hard yards when it's needed. Sometimes there's days when we're short-staffed, and I don't know, my HR days in hospitality also meant washing dishes and flipping rooms and cleaning when it was needed. So I think if you can provide that kind of environment, people are more willing to sort of pitch in and help out when they need to. Are there many businesses here where that's the case, where you guys have to sometimes put on different hats and yeah. And how are you guys at BlackRock usually go with that?
3:30 this morning I was up opening up a testing clinic and manning the clinic because we've got to be people for team management and breaks, and we roster all our staff, hiring all our staff, our admin team here, some of our site managers, everything will come through and do rosters because we have to. Basically, there's a lot going on at the moment, and there's not enough people out there manning the roles. Sometimes there are people with current little spikes in COVID. You wind up losing 6 people on any given day with 1 or 2 children coming home from school with a little surprise, and you just can't do it. I'm a great believer that if you're not prepared to hop in and do those sorts of tasks yourself, then you're not really being kind, as you say, to prove. It also shows you prove that you're not prepared to make them do things that you as a leader
wouldn't do yourself.
I think that goes a long way to help with morale, but it also it's just good business sense. You got to do it.
Yeah.
And at the moment, like most of the businesses we work with, are that they're tired, we're all exhausted, we're short-staffed, we can't get staff, recruitment is tough. One kid has COVID, they have 7 days off. The next week, another kid turns positive, and mum or dad have to be home for another 7 days. So, who else is feeling that at the moment, from a HR perspective or like team's perspective? I know on a lot of the, like per Colburn notice boards, this cafe will be closed for the next 3 days or the next 7 days because we don't have staff. And there are businesses that can close, and there are businesses that rely on those people being there to keep other things going. So it is that tricky space.
So how do we get to be happy humans in our business? We want to introduce you to this idea of employees being both satisfied and dissatisfied, both at the same time. It's based on Hertzberg's motivation hygiene theory, or dual factor theory. We found this video a couple of years back, and it really spoke to us. We were like, whoa, this makes so much sense. So, and this is kind of, it puts it into perspective for us how we can kind of then convey to you guys how you can make your employees happy and why maybe they're happy here but they're not happy here.
I learned something recently that absolutely changed my paradigm on people and leadership. It was by a guy called Dr. Hertzberg, right? And he talks about the different factors that make us happy and unhappy at work. And what he says is that most people view job satisfaction and dissatisfaction as a spectrum, and it ranges from I'm dissatisfied to I'm okay to I'm happy to I'm very happy. And what Hertzberg talks about is that job dissatisfaction and job satisfaction are separate things. They're separate and independent things. And what causes job dissatisfaction is a lack of what he calls hygiene factors, right? So like job title, security, office environment, all of that sort of stuff. In the absence of all of that, we will be dissatisfied. But with all of that, we will not be satisfied. We just won't be dissatisfied. And so the opposite of job dissatisfaction is not job satisfaction, but an absence of job dissatisfaction. And what causes job satisfaction is what he calls motivating factors as opposed to hygiene factors. So motivating factors are things like I'm challenged by the work, I love what I'm doing, I'm feeling inspired, I'm feeling engaged, right? And that will cause job satisfaction. But resolving hygiene factors won't make you happy at work. At best, it will just mean that you're not unhappy at work, right? And so technically speaking, according to Hertzberg's theory, you can hate and love your job at the same time. Because I hate it because the hygiene factors aren't there. I love it because I love the intrinsic nature of the work. And so ideally for us as leaders, entrepreneurs, anybody managing and leading people, is it's understand the hygiene factors need to be taken care of in order to reduce job dissatisfaction. But don't mistake that for enabling your people to be happy at work, because it's not the same thing. It will just mean that they're not unhappy at work. In order to be happy at work, that comes from intrinsic factors that are intrinsically connected to the work. Like, am I challenged? Am I engaged? Am I inspired? Do I understand why it's meaningful? And so we want to minimize the absence of hygiene factors and maximize the presence of creating meaningful work for individuals that care. And then not only will we not be dissatisfied, but we will also be satisfied at work. Don't you find that interesting? Did you follow that? So this literally blew my mind. I read this like 2 weeks ago, and I love this because it's not often I read something that changes my entire paradigm, particularly in a field that I've been researching since I was 14, so for the last 18 years, right? And it completely changed my paradigm. But I tell you where this gets even more interesting is where else in life does it apply, right? Because when I'm talking about hygiene factors and motivating factors, I think we've got a world that thinks job satisfaction comes from hygiene factors, and it doesn't, right? The other thing that's interesting with Hertzberg's theory is that pay is a hygiene factor. It's not a satisfier. And so in the absence of getting paid what you think you're worth, yes, that may cause dissatisfaction, but getting paid what you're worth doesn't cause satisfaction, right? But we've got a world that looks at hygiene factors thinking it's going to cause satisfaction, and it doesn't. At best, it causes the absence of dissatisfaction, right? And so then you go, okay, where else in life does that apply? I tell you, relationships, right? How many people do you know that are in relationships because the hygiene factors are met? It ticks all the boxes on paper, but it lacks the meaning, the depth, the X factor, the soul connection, whatever you want to call it. But so on paper, and when I talk to my friends, it looks good and it looks like I'm ticking all the boxes, but you kind of get the sense that they're not overly enjoyed or fulfilled by it. It's the same thing. It's that relationships don't span from I'm dissatisfied to I'm very satisfied and I'm happy. They are independent and separate measures. So we've got a generation of people that are in relationships that cause them to not be dissatisfied. But do we have a generation of people that are in relationships that are helping them feel satisfied? They are not the same question. They are fundamentally different, right? So you can take Hertzberg and relate it to culture and people and leadership and management. You can take it and apply it to relationships. You can take it and apply it to health. You can apply it to any area of life. It's fascinating. Factors that cause dissatisfaction are fundamentally different to the factors that cause satisfaction. And just because you're not happy, that doesn't mean that you are happy. In your relationship, in work, in the business that you've chosen, in everything. I reckon there's a fundamental paradigm for like humanity to grasp, because I reckon culturally everyone's running around trying to minimize the absence of hygiene factors so that they're not dissatisfied, thinking that when they're not dissatisfied, that means that they're happy. And it's like, sorry, all you did was got back to neutral, right? Unless you have meaning and inspiration and you're genuinely engaged, relationship, work, business, whatever it is, fitness and training regime, unless you're genuinely engaged, then you're just not satisfied. It's not that you're actually happy.
So does that kind of make sense? It kind of makes you go, it kind of makes you go, oh, hang on a minute. He goes on to talk about how you can relate that sort of thing to other areas of your life as well. And I find it particularly useful when you're talking about relationships. So let's think about, your perfect little Instagram family. And they, have 2.7 children and a lovely white picket fence and a dog and a cat, and they do this and they have a nice car and a nice house and all those things. Outwardly, they look like they're a happy little family, but on the inside, you know, if they're not supported, you know, maybe there's some kind of, I don't know, domestic violence happening on the inside, whatever those other things, those motivational factors are, if they're not there, then that whole picture of that relationship and that happy family isn't really happy. It's just, you know, they're ticking boxes over here, but they're not ticking boxes over here. So when you can kind of look at it like that, you kind of go, well, hang on a minute, this can actually help me make sense of how I can actually make my employees happy at work. We like to kind of break it down and talk about the basics, which are the hygiene factors that we need for our employees
To
to
be
be
not
not dissatisfied. And then we talk about the warm fuzzy bits that we like to call them, and they're those motivational factors. And then that's the things that then people are satisfied at work and makes them happy and they love being at work and coming to work.
Who has been in a job, and I have, where you have no contract, you don't know what you're being paid, you don't know if the pay rate is even right, you probably don't even know that there's somewhere to go to check that. So my first job was exactly that, straight out of uni, no contract, didn't even think anything of it. Had no idea if my pay rate was correct. There was probably not many of the hygiene factors in at all. I didn't have a job description. I didn't know what was going to happen if things didn't work or if I made a mistake or if there was an issue. So there's no security or safety around that process if something goes wrong, essentially. So if a business came to us, and generally businesses come to us because they've got someone who's not working and they want to fire them, the first thing we will ask is, have they got a contract? Do they have a job description? And do they know how this process is going to be managed? Our ultimate goal in our mind is to try and flip it, obviously, and see if we can get it to work out and change some mindsets. But has anyone here been in that situation where they don't have a job description? Yep. Or they don't really know what the pay rate is? So they're the things that are making you feel safe or make your team members feel safe and not dissatisfied. They know they're on the right level. They know they're valued from that perspective. They know who to go to if there's an issue and how that's going to be managed. They know that what the requirements are of their role and what they have to do on a day-to-day basis because it's in their job description.
So another example of that is you might hear people say, I like my job, but I'm bored. So they're those things. They have the contract in place, they have a position description, they know they've got a lovely office that they go to, the pay's great, blah, 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 but they are actually bored senseless doing whatever it is that they are doing. So
This was Nicole.
Yeah.
When I first started
my
this,
job.
I would get a text message and it was great. Nick's role, paid well, was very flexible with her kids, offered a lot of those hygiene factors. But on a daily basis, I would get a message saying, sweet Lord, I don't know if I'm going to survive today. This is really mind-numbing. I'm far more capable of the tasks that are set out for me on a daily basis. But I'm torn because it's hard to get a mesh and get that right role in a business.
And also, no one ever asks me, was I happy in my job? Because I would have told them. But no one cared. They just wanted me to come, do my job, off you go. So think about that also. What would it mean to your employees for you to actually care about trying to, solve some of these problems of, I like this, but I really am not happy here. So let's look further at that, Angela.
Okay. So the hygiene factors which we just spoke about, the employment contracts, pay rate and conditions, position descriptions, your performance management, obviously your policies and procedures, they're your guidelines, they give us rules. It's like your kiddies like to, know the boundaries and what's going to happen, and clearly defined expectations. So it's that thing of, not making people aware of what's happening, but then having repercussions when things don't go how they're meant to. It's really hard to understand if you don't know what the rules of the game are. And a lot of these things are available, right? So they're all on Fair Work. They're free. They can be accessed. Yes, sometimes the language is hard, and sometimes you read a paragraph 10 million times and you're still not sure what they're talking about. But they're there. So you can have a basic contract, you can have all this sort of information and have it for your team members. And you can, email off and ask questions and all those sorts of things as well. How does everyone go from this perspective in their own businesses?
Yeah.
Is it something that...
We've got that stuff sorted.
Yeah. Is it something that you guys feel is important or find trouble with it? Like, a lot of people come to us as well just because they're time poor. We could do a lot of these things for them in a shorter amount of time than it meant. They're better off doing what they're there to sort of do.
We also find a lot of businesses start their business, and we are guilty of this as well. And you just kind of make do, you're going along, it's all okay, blah, 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 and you're doing really well, and you're like, got to employ someone and kind of really need to actually act like a big real business now and put all these things in place, because never did I actually think that I would actually be employing someone. So that's kind of the points that we get people as well, is that they know that this is the next step, and they, often they're plumbers. I just know how to plumb. I don't know how to be a HR person, or I don't know how to.
I don't want to.
And I don't want to know any of that. I need someone else to do it. So.
And I think a lot of the time we can look at it and go, that's okay, we'll just muddle our way through it until we get to 10 employees or 20 employees. But it only takes one employee to bring you unstuck. So it's really beneficial to look at it from the get-go and have these systems into place so that as you grow, you can grow with it, your team can grow with it, and your systems can grow with it. Okay, so the motivational factors. What are some things here that people do in the workplace that they feel is meaningful for their team? Any takers?
We had a lunchtime jigsaw going.
Oh, awesome.
Really incredibly frustrating.
I love it. Anyone else? It's not one of those ones where they're all like, I saw one the other day and it was just like lines all over.
Original.com.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
And we would do 90% of it, and then go to tape, and these two would finish up all of it. And send photos. And send.
So we're sitting here sort of together at lunchtime and actually away from computers and away from our offices.
And have a break.
Yeah.
We're very guilty of eating while you're at the computer
Yes.
and that sort of thing, and it actually makes us stop, sit down, have a break, switch it out for a while, get up, walk around, and talk to each other.
Yeah.
Instead of just talking about working across the desk.
Yep.
It works very well.
That's great. And it's that connection and the rapport building and finding out about each other. I know in hospitalities can be really bad for this, I feel. You come to work and you leave your problems at the door and you put your smile in the face and off you go. But I like to think that we could have teams that if you're not having a great day and you do come to work and you're unable to put that smile on your face, that you can rally around each other and chat it out so that you do have that ability to then go out and go, wow, I'm in such a great team that I've been supported. I can now go out and carry on with the work that I have to do with a smile on my face because I've been able to nut things out. So I think it's nice that you guys can get together and connect on a different level other than work with a frustrating thing like a jigsaw puzzle. So looking at what motivates our employees, and that can be different for everybody. So for me, I like to come to a business where I feel like I'm actually cared about, and that the business, I guess, does some little things to show that they do care about their people and they're meaningful. I like things like celebrating people's birthdays, I guess. Knowing my team members, knowing if they've got children, what their children's names are, what their goals might be around work or outside of work, and treating people fairly, I guess, as well. It can have a flip side. I've flown chefs home who've been stuck in Perth because I need a chef, and it might have been under tragic circumstances kind of thing, and I'll be that support person.
For me, some of these things, it's more about being challenged to work on these things as well, but making sure that all that work is meaningful for people, and that there's not one person who just gets all the mundane jobs loaded onto them. We can share that kind of stuff around so that everyone has a meaningful job. It might mean that knowing that your admin person is actually wanting to study graphic design and she wants to do a social media course, and you let her do that or give her time off during work time to do that, so that then they can come back and do your social media, and then you realise that it's actually pretty awesome and it's a much better job than what you were doing. So those are the sorts of things that can bring value to your business as well, if you just take the time to get to know your people.
Recognition of achievement. A lot of workplaces have those things in place, and they can vary. So I don't think it needs to necessarily be things that a lot of money is spent on either. I think we can do these things. I used to have a boss back at my days at Komatsu that every afternoon he thanked me. And I actually really appreciated it, and I will still remember him every day for that reason, that he would thank me every afternoon for my work. Work-life balance, but understand what that means for your business first before you go and offer it, because I might feel that work-life balance means working from home 3 days a week. The business's meaning of work-life balance might be that you can leave to go and see a child's presentation, or you can knock off at 4 p.m. instead of 5 to coach your son's soccer team or something like that. So just be clear with what it is for your business, what that means. Community involvement. If you'd like, you might like your team members to volunteer and help in the local community and help support local organisations, Bunnings barbecues, or volunteering at the neighbourhood centre to serve meals, all those sorts of things. And a big one for us is understanding how your people would like to feel when they come to work. So how are they feeling at work? How do they not want to feel when they come to work? And the question that we hate asking, how do they currently feel when they come to work? I don't know if everyone's been in this situation, but there's times when you might be in a job that you're not enjoying, and it's from that get-go. It can be from waking up to getting in the car, that whole dread of the trip to work, to getting to work, not enjoying your job. So it's having the courage to ask those questions, and listening to the information that may not be what you want to hear, or talking through that issue with people. I've had a team member before who hated their job, was really unhappy in their job, made life really hard for the rest of their team, but we were in a 7-day week industry, so when it panned out, it was that she was working weekends, her husband was working weekdays, they never got to see each other. So she didn't actually hate the job, it just didn't fit her lifestyle anymore, which was okay. So they're the kind of things that we need to find out about as well.
So for us, really, it's just knowing your team, it's checking in with them, it's asking them the questions that you really need to know the answers to, really. And for us, despite what Wayne says, this should be your number one priority. And it's on repeat. So it's not a case of, Nick, I asked my employees 2 years ago how they felt. Well, how they felt 2 years ago doesn't really necessarily mean that that's exactly the same way as they're feeling now. Because our businesses evolve, they're always changing, and so are they. Like, maybe 2 years ago they didn't have kids, now they do. Maybe 2 years ago, life was splendid.
And then
now
COVID
maybe, COVID hit, and there's all sorts of different things. Maybe they're caring for their elderly parents now. There's so many things that change, and we need to be checking in with our people regularly.
And I think too, it's very similar to what Wayne was saying with customers. It's different for each business. So what may have worked for you with one team and you up and go into a different industry and all of a sudden you've got a team that don't respond to you. It can be very different from industry to industry, team to team, and the composition of that team as well, how people are feeling and how they interact with each other.
And also the situation, I think, is important as well. If you have never asked your employees how they feel or what they want to do in the next 5 years, and you suddenly ask those questions, I guarantee you they're probably not going to tell you the truth on that first instance. So you need to gain their trust and make that a sort of a gentle, slowly process, because they probably are thinking that there's an ulterior motive to that question if you just ask it out of the blue. And we've experienced that because we come into businesses and we know that this is our approach. But those people that we're asking these questions to are like, ugh, HR's here, what do they want? We're all getting the funds, we're getting fired, it's all bad. So you need to kind of build that trust as you go as well, but you need to have those conversations all the time.
Do you pull this back, just like around that, do you pull it back to your values? Like do you, so, people can display certain behaviours and things like that. Do you try and...
It can be their preconceived values. So,
so the business values...
and with how they sort of operate influences it as well. So we do a lot of work with Tab.
Yep.
We personally work with Tab for our business, but we do a lot of training with Tabitha in businesses as well, because it's like the HR thing. We all have preconceived conceptions or things that have influenced our lives along the way, that when they pop up again, we already get that image in our mind of how it's going to play out and how it's going to happen. And then we sort of go on the road of that. So I think from business values, we like to have it look at employee values as well. So I think if you've got your business values, of course, the team learns to operate in that space and what it is that you want to provide as a business. But I think do that within your team as well. So what are your internal team values? How would you like to operate as a team? When things go wrong, how would you like to handle that as a team? In mind, and try and operate fully in that space. If you need to roll out a new policy or a new procedure, how are you going to do that being mindful of your team, how they like to learn, how they like to feel? If people like to feel involved and communicated to, they might not like to just walk into a lunchroom and find all the updates on a piece of paper. They might like to have a meeting and be spoken to face to face. There's all different underlying factors here with that. Do you want to go to that and then I'll get the cards out?
Sure. I've got one little slide in between. So yeah, it's all pretty simple, right? So basically what we're trying to say is if you've got all those hygiene factors in place, your team aren't going to be not dissatisfied. If you then try and start working in those motivational factors, they're also going to be satisfied, and hopefully that leads to happy humans, which hopefully then that leads to awesome customers, service, and all of those things all married together. One of the big questions that we always get asked, and I think it's certainly been in the Hunter Valley, is how can I compete? How can I compete, and how do I retain my staff? How do they not jump ship and go and chase some lovely cash driving a truck? Well, from our experience, speaking to lots of different people, when we're recruiting, it gets to the point, there are definitely people who love that big fat paycheck, but a lot of the people that we speak to get past that. And then it becomes all these motivational factors that they're lacking in the roles that they're in, and they then talk about, I just can't do it anymore. It's boring, I don't feel supported, I have to stick in my lane. If I ever put my hand up and say, hey, maybe we could do this, I'm shot down. It's all of those things that people then go, this isn't worth it. They're the things that as small business owners, we need to kind of focus on and go, okay, this is my point of difference, and this is how I'm going to attract my internal customers. So you'll also find that that person who's chasing the money, they're not the people that you want anyway, because they're the ones who just want this and want that, and they want this, and they're not really worried about you giving your all, trying to make sure that they're happy, because you're never going to make them happy. So the people that we want to employ are the ones who value us as employers, who take the time to go through all of this and make sure that our people are happy. So what positive things as business owners do you have to offer them? And how do those things positively impact my business? So if we can think about a scenario, giving your employee an hour off per week to coach their son's soccer team, what does that bring to you? So if you put a logoed shirt on that person, and you sponsor the team, and then you've got your logo on the team, and then when you go to recruit for a new technician, little Johnny's dad, Mitch, he goes, I might apply for that job because I can see how that employer values their employees and their team and their community, and it's great goodwill. I'm going to apply for that job. And you go, woo, because Mitch is awesome, and he would never have even known that your business existed had you not put your little, or you didn't let your employee go and coach the son's soccer team. So I think it's about thinking laterally, outside of the box, of how these things that you can offer people will benefit your business.